Rain drummed softly against the old mailbox when the first envelope arrived. The handwriting was unmistakable. Round, careful, a child's effort frozen in time. Daniel froze on the porch, his breath trembling as he turned the paper over. 10 years. 10 years since the night Madison disappeared. 10 years since he'd stopped believing in hope. Yet here it was, an envelope addressed in his daughter's handwriting, smudged with something that looked too much like tears. He tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside, a single line. "Dad, I'm safe. Don't stop looking." No address, no return name, just that one sentence, the same way she used to leave notes on the fridge before school. For a moment, the air around him thickened, like the world had paused to listen. The smell of wet earth, the whisper of pine trees, the heartbeat pounding in his ears. He felt the years collapsing, folding into the ache that had never left. Daniel stumbled inside, clutching the letter like it might vanish if he blinked. Every inch of the house was still filled with ghosts, her drawings on the fridge, the untouched bedroom upstairs, the silence that used to belong to laughter. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the paper until the ink blurred with his tears. If the letter was real, it meant Madison was alive. But who sent it? How did it reach him now? And why? Outside, the rain grew heavier, washing over the empty street like a confession. Somewhere in that storm, the truth was waiting, buried in time, guarded by secrets. Daniel didn't know that this single envelope would bring someone else into his life, someone who would force him to face the past and teach him that sometimes love is found not in answers, but in the courage to search again. He hadn't stepped outside in weeks. The house in Portland felt like a museum of grief, every corner echoing a moment he wished he could rewrite. Daniel spent his days fixing broken guitars in the garage, pretending the sound of strings could drown out the silence. His marriage had fallen apart years ago, swallowed by guilt and the unbearable question, what happened to Madison? Each sunrise was just another reminder that he had failed to bring her home. Then the letter arrived, and with it, something inside him cracked open. If Madison was alive, someone knew where she was, but the police had closed the case long ago, and his ex-wife refused to reopen the wounds. He needed someone who believed in second chances, someone who could see through the lies buried in the past. That's when she appeared, Eleanor Hayes, a private investigator known for finding the unfindable. Eleanor didn't promise miracles. She promised persistence. Her voice carried the quiet strength of someone who'd seen too much loss to fear it anymore. When Daniel handed her the letter, she studied the ink like a surgeon studies a heartbeat. "If she wrote this," she said, "then she wants you to find her. We start tomorrow. Before we begin, if this story finds a place in you, if you still believe that love can come back even after everything, hit like, subscribe, and comment the city and state you're watching from. That's how I know where these stories are finding their way." That night, as thunder rolled across the Portland sky, Daniel felt something he hadn't in years, a reason to keep breathing. Elena's arrival didn't erase his pain, but it gave it direction. They didn't know each other, not yet, but grief has a strange way of introducing souls meant to collide, and as they packed for the road ahead, a fragile hope began to bloom. One letter, one promise, and two broken hearts daring to chase what they'd lost. The wipers scraped against the glass as Daniel guided his old pickup through the mist that hung low over the Portland streets. Dawn had barely broken, and the rain fell like a memory, soft, persistent, impossible to ignore. The letter lay on the passenger seat inside a plastic sleeve, its edges already worn from the number of times he'd unfolded it during the night. He couldn't stop looking at it. That one sentence had rearranged his world. Don't stop looking. Elena sat quietly beside him, her gaze fixed on the wet asphalt unrolling ahead. Her dark hair was tied back, her jacket zipped to the neck. She had the kind of calm that made you believe she'd seen every kind of sorrow and learned to survive it. Daniel wanted to ask why she had agreed to take his case when so many others had turned him away, but the words tangled in his throat. For now, silence was easier. The GPS on her phone glowed faintly in the dim light. "If the handwriting's authentic," she said finally, "it was written recently. The paper's new, not aged. The ink still reacts to moisture. So someone wanted me to think she's alive," Daniel murmured. Elena turned toward him. "Or she is alive. We won't know until we follow the trail. They left the city behind, climbing into the forested roads north of Oregon, where pine trees crowded the sky and fog clung to the ground like breath. Daniel's mind replayed the night of Madison's disappearance. The birthday balloons tied to the porch, the laughter, the power outage, the single scream that split the dark. He had searched for hours before calling the police. Days turned into years, and the case became another cold file buried in the precinct basement. Now, 10 years later, a single letter had pulled all those ghosts out of hiding. Elena had traced the postmark to a small town called Clearwater, about 200 miles north, a place barely on the map, surrounded by woods and forgotten motels. "It's the kind of place people disappear into," she'd said, or out of. They reached the highway as the rain lightened, turning the world silver. Elena rolled down her window slightly. "Tell me about Madison," she said. "What was she like?" Daniel hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Curious. Too smart for her age. She used to write me letters every week, even when we lived in the same house. She said it made her feel grown up. She learned that from you." He nodded. "I used to write to my wife when we were young, before the distance started." Elena's eyes softened. "You kept the letters?" "All of them." The truck hummed on, the road stretching endless ahead. Inside, the silence thickened. Not uncomfortable, but charged with the weight of things both wanted and feared. By noon, they stopped at a diner perched on the edge of the forest. The sign flickered with the word "open," half lit, half dead. The smell of coffee and grease wrapped around them as they stepped inside. A waitress with silver hair and a name tag that read June greeted them with a tired smile. "Long drive?" she asked. "Longer than it looks," Elena replied, taking a booth near the window. June poured 2 cups without asking. "Rain doesn't stop up here," she said. "You get used to it." Daniel watched the droplets slide down the glass. Outside, the pine trees swayed, their tops lost in fog. He wondered if Madison had seen this same view, if she was out there somewhere. Grown, scared, waiting. When June returned with pie, Elena leaned forward, spreading photos on the table. Madison's school picture, the scanned envelope, and a map with red circles. The handwriting analysis confirmed the letter's authenticity, she said quietly. But the postmark came from Clearwater's old post office, one that shut down 7 years ago. Daniel frowned. "Then how? Someone used an old stamp. Someone who knew the details of your case. Someone close. Possibly." Her phone buzzed. She answered quickly, murmuring a few words. Then her expression changed. "That was the lab. There's something else. You should see it yourself." They left the diner and drove to a small local station 2 towns over, where Eleanor's contact, a retired postal clerk named Martin, waited with an envelope under his arm. "Recognize this?" he asked, handing Daniel another letter. It was the same handwriting, the same paper, but this one had never been delivered. Addressed to Mrs. Helen Graves, Daniel's ex-wife, dated 8 years ago. "Where did you get this?" Daniel whispered. Martin sighed. "Found it in a misfiled batch when they closed the office. Never sent. The girl must have written more than one letter." Elena glanced at him. "There's a pattern here. Someone's been holding them back." Daniel felt the ground tilt beneath him. "You think she's been trying to reach us all this time?" Elena nodded slowly. "And someone didn't want you to know." The world outside the station blurred in a haze of grey as they drove away. The air between them grew heavier, the hum of the engine filling what neither could say aloud. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "If she's alive, we find her," he said. "No matter what it takes." Elena's voice softened. "We will." Night fell fast in the mountains. The sky turned indigo, then black, dotted with distant stars. They stopped at a roadside inn, the kind where silence feels too loud. Daniel carried his bag to the room, while Eleanor lingered at the car, staring at the reflection of the moon on the windshield. She traced her finger along the glass, as if following an invisible trail. Inside, Daniel unfolded the second letter again. The ink had faded in parts, but the words were still there. "Mom, I miss you. I'm safe with people who care about me. Tell Dad not to give up." He sat on the edge of the bed, his heart pounding. She was alive. She had to be. He could almost hear her voice, the way she used to hum before bed, her laugh echoing down the hallway. Every sound became a memory, every silence a question. A knock broke the trance. Elena stood at the door, holding a folder. "I ran the paper's watermark," she said. "It's from a manufacturer that stopped producing this batch 9 years ago. Someone's been keeping it stored, protected. This isn't random, Daniel. Someone planned for these letters to resurface now." Daniel rubbed his temples. Why wait 10 years? Maybe because she's ready to be found. Or maybe because someone finally let her go. Her tone carried something deeper, an unspoken empathy, the recognition of wounds she'd never voiced. He met her eyes and saw a reflection of his own ache there. Two people bound by loss, drawn together by a mystery neither chose. Later, when the motel lights dimmed, Elena sat at the small desk, reading through police reports. Daniel watched her from the bed, the glow of her lamp outlining her face in gold. She worked with quiet focus, flipping through pages, marking details. He realized then that she wasn't just chasing a case. She was running from her own silence. "Why do you do this?" he asked. She looked up, startled. "Do what?" "Find other people's missing pieces." Her gaze softened. "Because I lost mine once, and no one came looking." The words hung between them like the echo of rain on glass. Daniel wanted to say something, anything, but all he managed was a quiet, "I'm sorry." Elena smiled faintly. "Don't be. It's what makes me good at this." A pause stretched. Then she added, almost to herself, "You still believe she's alive, don't you?" "Yes." "Good," she whispered, "because sometimes belief is all that keeps people alive." The hum of the rain deepened outside, a lullaby to the restless. In that fragile quiet, something shifted, a thread of trust, thin but real. Daniel lay back, clutching the letter against his chest. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, only that he wasn't alone anymore. Outside, under the dripping eaves, a figure watched the motel from the shadows. The glow of a cigarette flared briefly, then vanished into the dark. Morning came slow, grey and wet. The motel curtains leaked a pale stripe of light that fell across Daniel's face, waking him from a dream he couldn't remember. The smell of coffee drifted from outside, and for a moment, the world felt almost still. Then he saw the letters again on the nightstand, the proof that stillness was a lie. Elena was already up, dressed, her hair pulled back, a folder open across her lap. "There's a report you should see," she said. A girl matching Madison's description was enrolled in a local homeschool registry in Clearwater about 8 years ago. The record vanished 2 years later. Daniel sat up fast. Vanished? The database was corrupted, but there's a name attached to the registration. Ruth Adler. She's a retired nurse living near the river. He grabbed his coat. "Then that's where we start." They drove in silence through winding forest roads, where mist curled low over the fields and deer stood still among the trees. Clearwater was smaller than Daniel had imagined. A cluster of houses, one church, a grocery store with faded paint, and a sign that read, "Welcome Home," as if the town itself were mocking him. Ruth Adler's house sat at the edge of the woods, white paint peeling, wind chimes clinking in the cold breeze. Eleanor knocked, and after a long pause, the door creaked open. An elderly woman peered out with wary eyes. "Mrs. Adler?" Elena asked, flashing her license. "We're looking for information about a child who may have lived here." Ruth frowned. "That was a long time ago." "Madison Graves," Daniel said quietly. "She would have been 7 then." The woman's face paled. "You're her father." Daniel's heart jumped. "You knew her?" "She wasn't here long," Ruth said, glancing toward the woods as if the trees might overhear. "Came with a woman who called herself Clara. Said the girl needed a safe place to stay. I didn't ask questions. I just took care of her when she got sick." Elena stepped closer. "Sick how?" "Fever. Nightmares. She kept asking for her dad. Drew pictures of a man with a guitar." Daniel's throat tightened. "That was me." Ruth nodded slowly. "One morning, they were gone. No goodbye. No forwarding address. Just gone." "Do you remember anything about the woman?" Eleanor asked. "Dark light, but distant. She paid in cash, and she had a scar on her left wrist." Elena scribbled notes. "That's something." Ruth hesitated. "There's one more thing. A few months ago, I got a letter with no return name. It said, 'Thank you for helping me once.' It was signed, Madison." Daniel's breath caught. "Do you still have it?" Ruth nodded, retrieving an envelope from a drawer. The handwriting was unmistakable. Eleanor examined the seal carefully. Same paper, same ink, but the postmark is from a different town, Brook Hollow, about 50 miles east. Daniel turned the letter over, eyes wet. She's alive, he thought. She's writing again. When they left the house, the clouds began to break, spilling shards of sunlight across the wet ground. For the first time, the light didn't hurt. As they drove toward Brook Hollow, Eleanor spoke softly. You know, most cases like this don't have hope left. Usually, it's about closure, not reunion. Daniel looked at her. Then why did you take mine? Because sometimes the only way to heal is to chase someone else's miracle. He studied her profile, the strength in her jaw, the tiredness in her eyes. She wasn't just chasing Madison. She was chasing something she'd lost long before. They reached Brook Hollow by dusk. The town sat between a river and a long stretch of highway, the kind of place that felt caught between time and forgetting. The post office was closed, but a small shop across the street still had lights on. Inside, the air smelled of paper and old ink. A man behind the counter looked up. "Can I help you folks?" Eleanor showed the envelope. "We're tracing the sender. Do you remember who dropped this off?" The man adjusted his glasses. "That was months ago. But I remember her. Young woman, maybe 17. Quiet. She mailed several letters that day." 17? Daniel whispered. "Yeah. Brown hair. Blue eyes. Wore a bracelet made of red string." Daniel's chest tightened. "Madison used to wear one just like that." "Do you know where she went after?" Elena asked. He shook his head. "Took the bus. Said she was headed north." They thanked him and left, stepping into the cool air. The moon hung low, reflecting off puddles like broken glass. Daniel stood still, staring at the horizon. She was out there, somewhere. Eleanor touched his arm gently. "We'll find her." He turned to her. "How do you stay so certain?" She smiled faintly. "Because I have to be." That night, they checked into another roadside inn. The room smelled of cedar and dust. Eleanor spread maps and notes across the table while Daniel sat near the window, lost in thought. "She's moving," Elena said. "Every letter comes from a new town, each closer to the border. Someone's helping her stay hidden." "From who?" "That's what we'll find out." Daniel glanced at her hand as she wrote. Steady, deliberate, unshaken. He wanted to ask about her past, but something about the way she avoided mirrors told him the answer wasn't simple. Hours later, when exhaustion won, he drifted to sleep. In the dream, Madison was standing on a bridge, sunlight on her hair, holding another letter. She smiled but didn't speak. When he reached out, she stepped back and vanished into light. He woke before dawn, breath ragged. The sound of the river filled the silence. Elena was still awake, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, eyes on the window. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "Dreams don't help much." Daniel joined her. "What do you dream about?" "Doors," she said simply. "Ones that don't open." He nodded, understanding more than she expected. "You think she's trying to find me?" "Maybe. Or maybe she's running from something else." The clock ticked, loud in the quiet. Outside, a train passed, its whistle echoing through the valley. When morning came, they packed up and followed the bus route north, tracing each stop, each letter. The path led them deeper into Oregon's forgotten towns. Rusted signs, overgrown tracks, faces that stared too long. In one small cafe, an old woman approached their table. "You're looking for the girl," she said in a whisper. Elena's eyes narrowed. "You've seen her. She came through last month, asked about a woman named Clara, paid with a 20 and left this." The woman handed them a napkin with a single line written in pen. "I remember the river." Daniel's hands shook. Madison loved rivers. She used to collect stones from everyone they visited. Eleanor turned the napkin over. There was a small symbol drawn at the bottom, a circle crossed by a line. "That's not random," she said. "It's a marker. She's leaving a trail." They followed it to the next town, where the same symbol was etched into a bench near the station, and again, carved faintly into a wooden post outside an abandoned church. Each sign felt like a whisper, pulling them forward. At sunset, they stopped by the river's edge, where fog rolled like smoke over the water. The reflection of trees shimmered in the current. Daniel crouched, running his hand through the cold stream. "She's been here." he murmured. Eleanor watched him silently. In that moment, she saw not the broken man she'd met in Portland, but a father whose love refused to die. She felt something stir, an ache, gentle but dangerous. As night fell, they set up a small camp near the bank. The air smelled of pine and wet stone. Daniel built a small fire, the orange glow soft against the dark. She used to love campfires, he said. We'd tell stories till she fell asleep. Sometimes she'd write one down and leave it under my pillow. Eleanor smiled. Maybe she's still telling you stories, just in her own way. He looked at her then, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. Why do you believe me, Elena? Everyone else gave up. Because giving up never saved anyone, she said. And because you remind me that people can survive things they shouldn't. The flames crackled. Silence settled. Comfortable. Fragile. For the first time, the night didn't feel endless. But somewhere in the distance, a twig snapped. Both turned toward the sound. The forest beyond the firelight seemed to breathe, the shadows shifting. Elena reached for her flashlight, sweeping it across the trees. Nothing. Only the whisper of the river. Still, she felt it, that pull in her gut, the sense of being watched. Daniel noticed too. You hear that? She nodded. We're not alone. The next morning, they found footprints near the water's edge. Small, barefoot, recent. Leading toward the woods, then gone. Daniel's voice trembled. She was here. Eleanor crouched to study the prints. Or someone wanted you to think she was. He knelt beside her, touching the damp soil. No, I know her steps. She looked at him, saw conviction raw and unshaken. And for once, she didn't argue. They followed the trail until it disappeared into the forest, where the light dimmed and the air smelled of rain and moss. Somewhere ahead, a songbird called, faint and distant, like a memory trying to return. The morning mist was thin enough to see the bridge now, an old iron span stretching across the Columbia River, its frame streaked with rust and time. Daniel slowed the truck and stared. Something in him already knew this was where the trail would change shape. The napkin's phrase echoed in his head. I remember the river. Elena stepped out first, scanning the area. Foot traffic only, she said. No cameras, no lights. If she passed through here, it was deliberate. They crossed the bridge slowly. The planks creaked beneath their boots, water rushing below in a deep grey current. Halfway across, Daniel saw it, scratched into the railing in faint, childlike handwriting. Maddie was here. His breath caught. The letters were fresh, cut shallow but clean. She's leaving messages, he whispered. Elena leaned close, tracing the carved words with her gloved finger. No weathering, maybe a few weeks old. She turned, eyes sharp. Someone else carved below it. Beneath the message, another line had been etched, smaller, trembling. She's not alone. A cold gust rolled across the bridge. Daniel's heart hammered. That means she's alive, he said, voice breaking. Or someone wants you to think that. He met her gaze. You really believe that? I believe in evidence. And right now, this bridge is screaming for us to listen. They documented everything. Photos, measurements, coordinates. Elena's hands were steady, but Daniel saw the tension hiding in her movements. When they finished, she looked downriver. There's an abandoned cabin 2 miles east. Locals say drifters use it. Then we go, Daniel said. They followed a dirt trail winding through cedar and rain-soaked ferns. Every sound felt amplified, the snap of branches, the hiss of wind. The forest carried a hush that wasn't peace, but warning. At the edge of the clearing stood the cabin. Its windows were boarded, its roof sagging under moss. A single shoe lay in the mud near the steps. Small, faded pink, the kind sold for children years ago. Daniel froze. That's hers, he said, voice shaking. Eleanor crouched, inspecting it. No tracks leading away. Whoever left this wanted you to find it. Inside, the air was stale with dust and old wood smoke. A table sat overturned, papers scattered across the floor. On the far wall, nailed crookedly, was a photograph. Madison, at 6 years old, smiling with missing front teeth. Daniel stumbled forward, tears flooding his eyes. How did this get here? Eleanor moved beside him. Someone's been collecting pieces of your life. She pointed at a map pinned beside the photo. Oregon divided into circles, lines connecting towns they had just visited. In the center, marked in red ink, was a date. October 17th. Daniel whispered, "That's tomorrow." Eleanor's expression hardened. "It's a meeting." They searched the rest of the cabin. In a drawer, Eleanor found a journal, half filled with neat handwriting that matched Madison's early letters, but matured. Pages of sketches, rivers, bridges, fragments of poetry. Then, on the last page, a single sentence. "He watches from the trees." Eleanor's stomach tightened. "We leave. Now." Outside, the wind had shifted. The forest felt awake. Daniel clutched the photo to his chest, unwilling to let go. They climbed into the truck and sped toward town, the road slick with mist. Halfway down the trail, the radio crackled with static. Then a voice, faint, almost swallowed by noise. "Dad!" Daniel swerved, pulling to the shoulder. "Did you hear that?" Elena grabbed the receiver. "Say again?" Nothing, only static and the hum of rain. "That was her," Daniel said, trembling. "I swear it was her." Elena frowned. "It could have been interference. CB range out here overlaps with emergency bands." But her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the dial. Somewhere inside her logic, something had fractured too. By nightfall, they reached a small inn near the highway. The owner, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, handed them a key. "You two the ones asking about the girl?" Eleanor stiffened. "Who told you that?" "Lady came by this morning. Said her name was Clara. Left a note for whoever asked next." He passed her a folded scrap of paper. Eleanor opened it carefully. In looping script, it read, "He shouldn't have followed. Tell him to stop before it's too late." Daniel's face drained of color. "She's alive, and someone's controlling her." Elena's voice was low. "Or protecting her from something we don't yet see." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. The room's radiator hissed like whispering ghosts. He stared at the letter until the ink swam before his eyes. What if Madison was afraid of him? What if the truth was worse than her disappearance? Elena sat across from him, studying maps under the lamplight. "If the date means what I think, we've got one day to figure where she's going. Then we don't stop." She met his gaze, steady, unwavering. "We won't." Outside, the storm broke open again, hammering the roof with rain. Beneath that sound, unseen in the dark, a truck engine idled near the tree line before fading away into the night. The next morning broke hard and colorless. A thin sheet of fog clung to the ground as if the forest itself wanted to hide what was coming. Daniel drove with white knuckles on the wheel, the wipers keeping rhythm with his pulse. October 17th, the date circled in red on the map, the place written beneath it, Brook Hollow Cemetery. Eleanor had been silent for most of the drive, eyes fixed on the grey ribbon of road. "Public ground," she finally said. "If Clara plans to meet anyone, it'll be there. Fewer questions. Easy to disappear." Daniel didn't answer. His jaw was tight, his heart louder than the engine. When they reached the gate, the world seemed carved in stone. Rows of trees bowed in the wind, leaves spinning like faded prayers. A single car was parked near the entrance, a dark sedan, engine still warm. They stepped out. Rain hung in the air but didn't fall, like the sky was holding its breath. Daniel could taste metal on his tongue. Elena's hand brushed against the pistol holstered under her coat. A reflex, not a threat. Then a figure appeared between the graves. A woman in a long coat, hair streaked with grey, moving with the stillness of someone who expected this moment. Clara. Daniel froze. The years collapsed at once. "Where is she?" he asked. Clara tilted her head. "You shouldn't have come." Elena stepped forward. "We're not leaving without answers." Clara's eyes flicked toward her. "You must be the detective. You of all people should understand. Some truths are merciful when left alone." Daniel took another step, voice breaking. "I got her letters. She's alive. You know where she is." Clara sighed. "Alive, yes, but not the child you remember. The world she's in now isn't one you can walk into without tearing her apart." Elena's tone sharpened. "That sounds like a threat." "It's a warning," Clara said quietly. "She's safe. That should be enough." Daniel's anger cracked through the air. "Enough! You stole 10 years from us." The shout echoed against marble and rain. Birds lifted from the trees, startled. Clara flinched but didn't move. "I saved her," she whispered. "From what you couldn't see." The words hit him like a blade. "From me?" Clara's silence was answer enough. Eleanor stepped between them, her voice calm but cold. Where is Madison now? Clara reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She placed it on a headstone and stepped back. You'll find her when she's ready, not before. Daniel grabbed the paper, a hand-drawn map, marked with the same symbol they'd seen near the river, a circle crossed by a line. At the bottom, 3 words, Bridge of Names. When he looked up, Clara was gone. The sedan's engine roared to life in the distance, fading into the mist. Eleanor knelt beside the grave, fingers tracing the cold stone. Bridge of Names, she repeated. It's real. Old rail bridge outside town, converted into a memorial after the flood 10 years ago. Daniel folded the map. Then that's where she'll be. They drove until the cemetery vanished behind trees. The rain began again, harder this time, drumming against metal. Daniel gripped the letter in his lap, as if it could guide him through the storm. Elena's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Martin, the retired clerk, found something, he said. The name Clara Adler. Fake. Real identity's Clarissa Holling, former foster home director shut down for unregistered adoptions. Disappeared after the investigation. Daniel's chest tightened. She took Madison. Eleanor's tone dropped, and hid her under a new name. They reached the bridge before nightfall. It arched across the river like a scar, each plank engraved with names of those lost in the flood. Wind howled through the beams, carrying the scent of iron and rain. Halfway across stood a single figure, hood pulled low. Daniel stopped breathing. Madison! He walked forward, heart pounding, afraid that if he called her name too loud, the vision would shatter. The girl turned. She wasn't 7 anymore. 17, tall, wary, her eyes the same shade of storm as his own. Dad, she said softly. The sound broke him. He ran the last steps and stopped inches away, terrified to touch her. It's really you. She nodded. I told you not to stop looking. Tears blurred his sight. Where have you been? Who kept you? She looked past him, toward Elena. She did. Elena froze. What? Madison's lips trembled. You found me before anyone else could. You just didn't remember. The world tilted. Daniel turned to Eleanor, confusion twisting into disbelief. What is she talking about? Eleanor's breath caught. Her memory flickered. An image she'd buried under years of cases. A little girl in a rain-soaked yard, clutching a red bracelet, whispering her name before disappearing into a police van. A foster assignment she'd assisted on, long before she became an investigator. She staggered back. I didn't know it was her. Madison stepped closer, tears mixing with rain. You told me to run. You said people were coming who'd hurt us both. Daniel stared between them. You knew her. Elena's voice broke. I thought I was protecting her. The system was collapsing. Children disappearing off record. I helped her escape. Clarity crashed over Daniel. Every road, every letter, every symbol had been leading not just to his daughter, but back to Elena's own buried sin. The woman he trusted had once held the key to his loss. Why didn't you tell me? He whispered. Because I didn't remember until now, she said. I left that world behind. I became a detective to atone for it. Madison reached out, placing a trembling hand over her father's. She saved me. Clara wanted to sell us. Elena stopped her. Daniel turned to her, torn between rage and gratitude. You could have told me from the start. I didn't know, she said again, voice shaking. Not until this bridge. The wind howled through the iron beams. Rain lashed sideways. Madison took a step closer. Dad, we can't stay here. They're watching. Who? Before she could answer, headlights flared at the far end of the bridge. A dark vehicle rolled forward, engine growling. Clara. She stepped out, shouting over the storm. Let her go, Daniel! You don't understand what's at stake! Eleanor drew her weapon. Back off! Clara raised her hands. You think this ends with reunion? There are others involved. People who built their lives on these disappearances. If you take her, they'll come for all of you. Lightning split the sky. Daniel shielded Madison, heart racing. I don't care. I'm not losing her again. Clara's voice cracked. Then at least take this. She tossed a flash drive onto the wet planks. Everything they've done. Proof. Use it if you want justice. Eleanor grabbed it. Why give this to us? Because redemption doesn't erase guilt, Clara said. It just asks you to share it. Before anyone could move, she turned and vanished into the storm, headlights swallowed by rain. The three of them stood alone on the bridge, the father, the daughter, and the woman who had unknowingly connected both fates. The river below roared, carrying away the echoes of every secret it had kept. Madison looked at her father. What happens now? Daniel brushed a soaked strand of hair from her face. Now we start over. Together. Eleanor lowered her gun, the weight of years pressing against her spine. For once, she didn't feel like an investigator. She felt human, flawed, forgiven, fragile. They walked back toward the truck as dawn began to break behind the storm. The flash drive gleamed in Elena's hand, tiny and powerful, a key to everything hidden. When they reached the road, Madison glanced back at the bridge. "I used to stand there and wait," she whispered, "every morning, hoping you'd come." Daniel swallowed hard. "I'm here now." The sun broke through the clouds, thin but certain. For the first time in 10 years, the day didn't hurt to face. They drove back toward Portland as the rain thinned to a silver thread, the sky opening in tired streaks of blue. The flash drive sat between Elena and Daniel like a small, sleeping fire. Madison leaned her forehead against the window, watching the river unwind beside the road, a ribbon of moving glass that had witnessed too many secrets. She did not speak at first. She counted bridges the way she had when she was small, whispering the numbers in her head until the whisper turned into breath and the breath into steadiness. When she finally turned, her eyes were clear. "If we are going to start over," she said, "we cannot keep anything hidden." Eleanor nodded. "Then we begin with the truth." She pressed the flash drive into her palm as if to measure its weight. "This holds names, transactions, times, places. The river has carried their crimes long enough." Daniel glanced at her. Gratitude warred with the raw ache of all the years he had lost. He could not stop touching his daughter's sleeve, like he had to keep confirming that she was not made of fog and memory. The old guitar case rode between the luggage, its wood warmed by the weak sun. He imagined a living room with light again, a night where a song could turn the walls into home. But first there was a reckoning. He tightened his grip on the wheel and said, "No more running." They reached the city in the thin gold of late afternoon. Buildings lifted out of the mist like ships. Eleanor guided them to a small office above a bookstore where she trusted the walls and the people who sat inside them. 2 journalists waited there, both patient and fierce, both accustomed to doors that would not open until someone pushed hard enough. The older one spoke gently to Madison, offering water, offering time, offering silence if she preferred it. Madison considered, then straightened her shoulders. "I will talk," she said, "but I do not want pity. I want you to write clearly, so no one can say they did not know." Elena slid the drive into a laptop and watched as a lattice of files bloomed onto the screen. Receipts, ledgers, emails that spoke without shame, names braided through the pages like wire. She read quickly at first, then slower, feeling each line like gravel underfoot. At the end, there was a folder marked Bridge. Inside, photographs had timestamps that matched storms and anniversaries, and days when Daniel had not been able to get out of bed. He stepped forward, jaw set. "Enough, let us bring daylight." The journalists copied the files. They asked questions without cruelty, careful not to touch open wounds. Madison told them about the houses where windows were covered in heavy cloth, about the rules recited like scripture, about the way she learned to leave marks in plain sight, because plain sight is where people refuse to look. She described Clara's switch from captor to penitent, the night a woman with tired eyes had pressed a note into her hand and whispered, "Run." Eleanor listened without interrupting, her own tired eyes holding steady, because penance is a road that has to be walked on feet and not on words. When the questions ended, the younger journalist said softly, "We will publish. We will not flinch. News moves faster than rain." By morning, the first story went live. By noon, the second. The names on the screen made phones ring and doors slam, and cars changed direction. A hearing date appeared as if by force of weather. The city, always loud, learned a new quiet as people realized what had been living beneath the floorboards of their certainty. Daniel kept the television off. He brewed coffee. He placed a fresh sheet of paper on the kitchen table and wrote his daughter's name in full, not as a prayer for the future, but as a statement of the present. Madison sat across from him and smiled without looking away. "We do not whisper anymore," she said. They arrived early for the hearing and waited in a corridor washed with pale light. Footsteps echoed. Voices turned down at the end of sentences the way people do when they are not sure whether courage will hold. Elena stood with her hands clasped behind her back, steady as a metronome. She had spent the night writing a statement and cutting it down until it only contained what mattered. When the doors opened, she walked forward and felt the old world shake inside her, the one with closed rooms and unmarked envelopes and rules that protected nothing but shame. She did not bow to it. Inside, the room held more eyes than any church. Some were kind, some were not. The officials spoke their language of process and order. Then it was Madison's turn. She stood and did not tremble. She described a decade like a map. The houses, the bridges, the carved messages, the letters that did not arrive because someone built a fence out of mail. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. When she finished, the room was quiet in the way a room gets when the truth has been said plainly and cannot be pushed back into shadow. Elena followed. She did not call herself a savior. She did not ask to be forgiven. She named what she had done and what she had failed to see. She described the network with a cartographer's precision. She placed the flash drive on the desk and said, "You may try to lose these names. The river does not forget them." Her voice did not break. It bent and did not snap. That is another word for strength. When it ended, a dozen microphones bloomed like metal flowers near the steps outside. Daniel felt the press of strangers and the itch of questions meant to provoke more heat than light. He put his arm around his daughter's shoulders and guided her through the noise. A reporter called out, "What do you say to people who doubt this?" Daniel stopped just long enough to turn and look directly at the camera. "I say we brought proof," he said. "I say my daughter is here." He did not say anything else. The rest was already written on the air. They did not celebrate. They went home. The house that had once been a museum of grief breathed in new ways. Windows opened. A plant that had not been watered in a season received a basin full of gentle rain. Madison walked the hallway and paused at the door to her old room. She did not go in. Not yet. She asked for the living room instead, for the guitar, for space enough to sit without watching the door. Daniel tuned the strings and waited for the sound to find the shape it had been missing. When he played, the notes were simple as daylight on a table. Madison listened with her eyes closed and counted the measures of a song she had not heard for 10 years. That night, they cooked. The kitchen learned their names again. The smell of onions and bread and something sweet filled the corners. Elena washed dishes after the meal because her hands needed a task and because small work done well can anchor a life. Daniel wiped the counter and asked Madison whether she wanted a new bracelet. She shook her head and touched the red thread at her wrist. "I will cut it when I am ready," she said, and not a day before. In the weeks that followed, the city changed. Not fast, not in a storybook way, but hearings were set and then held. People stepped forward and then did not step back. The old post office where letters had died reopened as a shelter with long tables, soft lamps, and a bulletin board filled with names of the found and the still missing. Ruth Adler sent a photograph of the river in winter, with a note that read, "Thank you for returning the sound to this town." June at the diner taped a newspaper clipping above the coffee machine and circled Madison's name in bright ink. The Bridge of Names received 3 more plaques and a bench where visitors could sit without their backs to the road. Elena kept working the case until it belonged to the public and not to her. When her part was finished, she walked away from microphones without leaving a forwarding quote. She returned to the bookstore office and stacked new files on the desk, smaller ones, quieter, but no less urgent. Daniel visited once with a paper bag full of sandwiches and coffee. They ate on the steps and spoke about ordinary things on purpose. When he rose to leave, he hesitated. "I do not know how to live with the fact that you once stood in a room with my daughter, and I did not know," he said. Eleanor met his eyes without flinching. "I do not know how to live with it either," she said. "So let us not make it a monument. Let us make it a gate." He nodded, a slow agreement with the kind of honesty that does not need an oath to keep it. Winter arrived in a hush, as if the sky wanted to listen. Daniel built a fire on a Sunday afternoon, and Madison spread letters across the rug. Not old ones, new ones, pages of blank paper waiting to be taught. She wrote the date on the top sheet and rolled her shoulders like a swimmer about to enter clear water. "These are not rescue notes," she said, smiling at the old phrase. "These are letters to the world." The first was to Ruth, the second to the woman at the cafe who had trusted the shape of a symbol, the third to a girl she had known by one name who now chose another. She wrote one to herself and tucked it into a book for later. She wrote one to Rain and one to the river for carrying the sound of her back to ears that would not give up. Then she wrote one to Elena and sealed it before she could change her mind. She walked it to the door where the evening waited in soft blue and asked her father to mail it. He held it like a medal and promised he would. They took walks without maps. They learned the city with new feet. They discovered a bakery that opened before the sun and a park where the light hung low and gold between trees in the last hour of day. Sometimes they spoke about the past because not speaking gave it more power than it deserved. Sometimes they did not. Daniel learned the rhythm of a house with two breathing people again. He learned which silence meant comfort and which meant please ask. He learned that redemption does not erase loss, but it does plant a seed in the ground where loss stood, and, if watered, it grows into something that looks like a tree, that looks like shade, that looks like the place where people can rest. One morning, near the end of the year, they returned to the bridge. The water ran cold and beautiful beneath them. The planks were damp from dawn. Names in metal caught the pale sun. Madison stopped at the railing and placed her hand over the carved line where she had written that small, brave sentence months before. She did not cry. She did not smile. She did something better. She breathed. Daniel took a folded page from his pocket. He placed it beside her hand. The handwriting was his, steady again. "You are not the letter I lost," it read. "You are the letter I am learning to write every day." They stood a long time, listening to the river speak its language of going and returning. Elena waited at the truck, giving them space, watching the water move because movement is a kind of prayer. When they rejoined her, Madison opened her fist. The red thread bracelet lay across her palm. She looked at her father. "Now," she said. He nodded. She handed him the small scissors, and he cut the thread. It fell like a soft comma on the ground. Not an ending, just a pause before the next clear sentence. They drove back through streets washed in winter light. The living room welcomed them like a hand steadying a shoulder. Daniel opened the guitar case and tuned in patient turns until the room grew warm with sound. Madison sat cross-legged on the rug and began to write lyrics for something new. Eleanor leaned against the doorframe, letting the scene settle into her bones. She did not think of balances or debts or scales. She thought of weather and of roofs that hold and of letters that arrive when they are meant to. When it grew late, Daniel closed the guitar and lit a single candle on the table, not for ritual, for attention, for presence. The flame did not flicker. Outside, rain began again, soft, familiar, no longer a threat. Madison looked at it and did not count the drops. She counted the possibilities. There are endings that shut doors and endings that open them. This one did not slam. It did not trumpet. It turned the knob and let in air. It let in morning. It let in the work of days. It let in the light that stays. And because a story can hold both truth and invitation, Daniel remembered to speak to the unseen room beyond the lens, to the wonderful chorus that had walked beside them from the first step of doubt to this quiet landing of love and proof. "If this found you," he said gently, "help it find someone else. Hit like, subscribe, and comment the city and state you are watching from. Maybe you will write the letter that leads someone home."